Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Please do be seated if you're going to be seated. We'll be starting in a moment. Good morning and welcome to Reserve Forces Day 2024. Please note that we are being live streamed as I speak. I'm Neil Smith and I'm your Master of Ceremonies once again for Reserve Forces Day. I must remind you that as we have done since 1998, our objective today is to remember and raise the profile of Australia's Navy, Army and Air Force reserves. We aim also to recognise serving and former reservists and to thank families and employers for their support. The parade will shortly form up and commence marching up the forecourt from my left down towards the city. And they will take position in front of me and they will be led by elements of the Australian Army Band. Now, keep an eye out because we do expect a flyover at 10 o'clock. The flyover being provided by a Pilatus PC-21 twin-seater aircraft from one flying training school down in East Sale. I'm also told that the aircraft that we'll be seeing this morning in a moment or two is actually also a member of one of the Roulette's acrobatic flying team. That aircraft from East Sale, the PC-21 trainer, will in fact fly on two legs, firstly to my left once again from the north to the south, and it will then turn around and it'll come across this way, from east to west. Once again, the parade will feature the tri-service banners of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, and of course also the national flag. I understand there will also be banners or standards provided by the 3rd Division and in particular the 4th Brigade, Victoria's own if you like, all elements of the Australian Army Reserve. And there will also be on parade a Reserve Force Day standard. I believe they have an association, so I guess it's the Reserve Force Day Association standards. Other elements will be on parade and they will be members or veterans from the Royal Australian Navy, the Royal Australian Air Force and various arms and corps groupings from Army. And among those people will be a great many national service veterans. I'm sure they will all be veterans of that period of national service between 1965 and 1972. So the veterans that we're going to be seeing on parade will be from the Infantry, the Royal Australian Engineers, the Royal Australian Army Service Corps, the Royal Australian Artillery and many other groups or corps within the Army. Many of these men and women have served not only in Australia, but overseas as well, often on full-time duty. Others died while serving. As I said, the Australian Army Band is present today and they're supporting the service and our commemoration activities with Captain Shane Gillard, their musical director. I hear the aircraft. It doesn't look like a PC-21, mind you. Looks strangely like a helicopter to me, so we're still expecting that fixed-wing aircraft, the PC-21 from East Sale. Members of the parade have just concluded an eyes right as they march past the eternal flame. They will march now to the steps of the shrine and turn around and come back and stop in front of the eternal flame. Once they're in position, they will halt, and then they will turn into line, dress off once again, and then stand at ease. RSM Danny Hill, the Regimental Sergeant Major of the Reserve Forces Day Association Group, has just completed the parade and stood the parade at ease. So at this point, once again, I welcome you, and we will now commence the commemoration phase of our service proper. At this point, I would like to introduce the Shrine host and a friend of mine in Governor Colonel John Coulson, OAM RFD ED. John Coulson is a former senior citizen military force infantry officer and a veteran of the Vietnam conflict, and he will speak now on behalf of the Shrine. Sir, lovely to see you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Neil. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the trustees, the life governors and the governors of the Shrine, I welcome you to this annual event. I was reminded when I got out of bed this morning and thought about the temperature here at the Shrine of 60 years ago up at Ballarat. The Melbourne University Regiment was having a recruit training course, and the RSM and I were out walking, watching the training. All of a sudden, the RSM, a dignified man with his pay stick, stopped, looked down at the ground, jabbed it a couple of times with his pay stick, and he said, "My God, sir, snow at Ballarat." I'm surprised we haven't got snow here this morning. Can I also, on behalf of the trustees, take this opportunity to congratulate Brigadier Bavington on his recent award of the Order of Australia. Overdue, but much deserved. To this sacred place, I say welcome. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here this morning.
Thank you, Colonel John Coulson. As always, words spoken with great aplomb and wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now put Reserve Forces Day into some better context. Whilst we acknowledge the service and sacrifice of all reservists, be they the naval brigades, the militia, the volunteers and others, going back to the 1850s, we should remember that the CMF, the Citizen Military Forces, was formed on the 1st of July 1948, soon after World War II. Today, of course, it is called the Australian Army Reserve and continues the proud traditions and heritage of its forebears. We must not forget also the men and women of the reserves of the Royal Australian Navy, which has a history going back well over 100 years in various forms, starting off here in Melbourne. And of course the Royal Australian Air Force, which was also established here in Melbourne 103 years ago in March of 1921. Happily, Reserve Forces Day was established in the 1990s and helped us to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Citizen Military Forces in 1998. And here we are today, 76 years after the reformation of the Citizen Military Forces. Fortunately, there are many of you here today who recall with pride their service in the CMF. I know I certainly do, albeit a short one. But what is it about the reserves that is so special to us and so many others? Let me introduce a man who can answer that question in Colonel Daniel Strack, to my right. Colonel Strachan enlisted in the Army Reserve in 1999. Now, I had a chat to him before he started, and it took an awfully long time for him to go through his service highlights, but I'll just mention a few of them. He started off in the early days, in the late 1990s, with Melbourne University Regiment. He then served with the 8th, 7th Battalion of the Royal Victorian Regiment. He was also the CO, the commanding officer of the 5th, 6th Battalion of the Royal Victorian Regiment, and is currently the Colonel Training and Assistant Commander of the 4th Brigade. How he does those two jobs at the same time, I really don't know, and part-time at that, or supposedly part-time. The Colonel also tells me that he's been deployed on operations in places like East Timor and the Solomon Islands, and has spent a lot of time on full-time duty, doing other tasks such as fighting the bushfires just a few years ago. He is presently, just to help put his service into some better context, he is presently serving not only in the Army with the 4th Brigade, but he is also a very, very senior officer in Australian Border Force based here in Melbourne. Who better suited to tell us, what does the reserve mean to me? Please, Colonel Daniel Strack.
Thanks so much for the very warm welcome. I appreciate it. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Defence Reserves from all services, veterans present here today. Today we gather at this sacred memorial, the Shrine at Melbourne, to commemorate Reserve Forces Day. This is a day of significance, a day to honour and celebrate the vital role played by the men and women of the Australian Defence Force Reserves. Since the establishment of the Reserve Forces Day in 1998, we have set aside this day each year to recognise the selfless dedication and tireless efforts of our reservists. Defence Reserve soldiers, sailors and aviators have stood ready to serve our nation in times of war, conflict, peacekeeping operations and during natural disasters and emergencies. Their service is not only a testament to the commitment but also a reflection of the highest values of the Anzac legacy: courage, endurance, mateship and sacrifice. As we gather here today, we are reminded of the immense contribution that reservists have made to defend our nation and its national interests. Whether wearing high visibility vests over their camouflage uniforms, while clearing debris from bushfires, assisting with COVID-19 responses, or deploying overseas on a range of warlike and non-warlike operations, our reservists have consistently demonstrated outstanding loyalty and professionalism. Today, we honour the distinct vital roles played by each component of our reserves. The Navy's mission is to prepare naval power to enable the integrated force in competition and conflict. As an island nation, Australia's security and prosperity rely heavily on maintaining good order at sea. Navy reservists support and sustain contemporary ADF operations in which the Navy may be engaged, delivering capability and workforce surge capacity, as well as a strategic resource that can be partially or fully mobilised in times of need. The Air Force's mission is to prepare air and space power to enable the joint force in peace and war. By combining technical, tactical and operational excellence, the Air Force reservists provide crucial capabilities in the delivery of air-based protection and security, as well as the specialist reserve roles such as doctors, nurses, psychologists, lawyers, medical scientists and environmental health officers, amongst others, as the Navy Reserve also does. The Army's mission is to prepare land power to enable the joint force in peace and war. The 2nd Division commands the brigades of Army's part-time force, as well as the Regional Force Surveillance Group across the vast north. A parade with the Chief of Army in July of 2022 marked the transition of the Australian Army's 2nd Division to an independent and vital functional command of Army, and recognised Army's evolution to ensure we remain ready now and be prepared to meet the demands of the future. The changes improve the 2nd Division's readiness, scalability, resilience and its capacity to achieve its mission. The transition is also an expression of trust and confidence that ADF's senior leadership have in the soldiers of the 2nd Division. Our Army reservists are at the forefront of various tasks, including support to civil agencies, border protection, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Their versatility and readiness ensure they can respond effectively to a range of domestic, regional and global operations. The story of Captain Jason Pittman illustrates this adaptability and balance. Thank you, Air Force. The story of Captain Jason Pittman illustrates this adaptability and balance. Jason, an Army Reserve General Service officer with 3 Health Services Brigade and a civilian paramedic, demonstrated exceptional presence of mind during a Homeland Security exercise in Melbourne last year. While undertaking an exercise-related driving task in the Melbourne suburb of Point Cook, Jason saw smoke coming from a nearby house. Without hesitation, and as the first responder, while also in military uniform, Jason assessed the situation, cordoned off the site from onlookers, rendered assistance to the affected individuals from smoke exposure, and called emergency services. His quick thinking and professional skills as a soldier and as a paramedic made a significant difference that day and ensured the safety of the 4 unattended children inside that house. He stood up when it counted most. This story is not a one-off, but it is a simple testament to the remarkable dual capabilities our reservists bring to both their civilian and military roles. As citizen soldiers, moreover, it gives an insight into the reservist mindset. Since Federation, over 1.25 million Australians have taken up part-time roles in the armed forces, bringing with them a wealth of skills, knowledge and perspectives from their civilian lives. These contributions have significantly broadened and strengthened our military capabilities. The unique blend of civilian and military expertise that reservists retain ensures we are well prepared to face the evolving challenges of the 21st century. Today, it is also appropriate that we acknowledge the sacrifices made by these dedicated men and women, many of whom have sustained injuries in the line of duty. We also remember those who have made the supreme sacrifice. Private Greg Scher is one, a respected member of the Army Reserve who was killed in action in Afghanistan while serving in his Special Forces unit. His bravery and dedication remind us of the heavy cost of freedom and the deep gratitude we owe them. Each year, his mates gather here at the steps of the shrine on Anzac Day to honour Greg's service. It's a poignant testament to the enduring impact of his service and his friendship. Their service and dedication, demonstrated by our ADF reserves, are the bedrock of our national security, and the legacy continues to inspire future generations. Our gratitude extends beyond the reservists themselves. We also recognise the unwavering support of our ADF reserves' families, friends and employers. Without their understanding and engagement, the remarkable contributions of our reservists would not be possible. These supporters, who often take on additional responsibilities during their loved ones' absences, play a crucial role in the success of our reserve forces. I recognise the resilience of my wife, Michelle, who's sitting here beside me right now, who has endured multiple deployments overseas, 2.5 years of me being away, and no less than 18 months physically overseas, all the while looking after our kids and pursuing her own career as a medical professional. The families are the true heroes in this story. As we reflect on the past, it is equally important to look to the future. The strategic landscape is becoming increasingly complex, with new threats emerging in cyber, space, and other domains. In this environment, the adaptability and the readiness of our reservists are more critical than ever. We need to continue to support to develop our reserve forces, ensuring they have the training, resources, and opportunities to thrive in their roles. On this Reserve Forces Day, we should all take a moment to reflect on the sacrifices and contributions of our reservists. To the men and women of the Australian Defence Force Reserves, both past and present, you need to know your country is immensely proud of you. Your dedication, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to this service are a critical enabler of a nation's security and the embodiment of our national values. Thank you for your service.
Colonel Daniel Strack, ladies and gentlemen, and Mrs. Michelle Strack, particular present. Pleasure to have you with us today. Colonel, it hit the spot. That was outstanding. For one of the first times for me on occasions such as this, it's really driven home to me how important the dual capability is of the men and women of the reserves here in Australia. And to hear some personal stories really brought it home to me, and I'm sure all of you. So thank you, Colonel, once again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a spiritual interlude. Please join with me in the prayer for the armed forces. Almighty God, we commend to your gracious care and keeping all the men and women of our armed forces at home and abroad. Defend them day by day with your heavenly grace. Strengthen them in their trials and temptations. Give them courage to face the perils which beset them. And grant them a sense of your abiding presence wherever they may be. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Could I bother you, please, ladies and gentlemen, to stand? And RSM, if you'd call the parade to attention. I will now invite the Shrine Guard to take post. Shrine Guard, take post. And the Guard presents, as you can see, a final example of precision drill with uniforms and weapons similar to those used by our light horse regiments of yesteryear, complete, as you will see very often with the Shrine Guard, an emu feather in their slouch hat. As the immortal Banjo Patterson said of the mounted infantry reservists over 100 years ago, you will always know him by the feathers in his hat, and we still do. Thank you. Please do be seated. We start now with the wreath-laying part of the service, and the band will be accompanying that activity with a lament, I believe. And so I'd ask once again Colonel Daniel Stark to come forward to lay a wreath on behalf of the reservists. And I understand that Brigadier Neil Bavington, that recently decorated Brigadier Neil Bavington, lovely to have you with us again, sir. He will also assist Colonel Strack. If there is anybody else who wishes to lay a wreath, please step forward now. We come now to the more sombre section of the service, which recalls the sacrifices made by our men and women in time of war especially. Shortly I will introduce Sergeant Heather Fry to recite The Ode, which is a moving 1914 penned poem which is usually delivered on such occasions. Please be sure to repeat "We will remember them" with Sergeant Fry. This poem will be the segue for the bugle call, Last Post. Then there will be a period of silence towards the end of which you should repeat the phrase, lest we forget. Next will be the bugle call, Rouse, and conclude this section, the national anthem will be played. Ladies and gentlemen, please do stand for this segment of the commemoration service. Sergeant Fry, the ode, please.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
I will shortly ask the Shrine Guard to dismount. Shrine Guard, Peace out. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Before I actually wind the service up, Colonel John Coulson is coming back to say a couple of words. Colonel.
Thank you, Dale. Thanks for the opportunity. As your host, I took the privilege of saying just a couple of extra words. We here at the Shrine embrace the diversity of our community, and we acknowledge the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which we acknowledge the sacrifice of Australian servicemen and women. And we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. I also want to take this opportunity to say that I have a former student of mine on parade today. And I refer to the tall, handsome bandmaster, Captain Shane Gillard, formerly of Wellington Secondary College. The wheel turns, doesn't it? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Colonel Coulson. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this service has helped you better recognise and recall increasingly reservists have stepped up to assist the community in time of flood, fire and of course COVID-19. In addition, they have been repeatedly deployed in areas of conflict around the world in recent years. For that we thank you all. For today's efforts, thanks go to the Shrine team and especially the Shrine Guard and the Protective Service officers who are supporting us today. And of course our speaker, Colonel Daniel Strack, and his wife Michelle. We're very grateful that you have been able to be here today and were so supportive. The Australian Army Band, under Captain Shane Gillard, as just mentioned, from Simpson Barracks, you have helped us out immensely today. Thanks also go to Brian Neal and Regimental Sergeant Major for the RFD Association, Danny Hill. Also, it's nice to have present with us the President of the RSL of Victoria, Mr Rob Webster. And I acknowledge that General Barry, lovely to see you again here, sir, and also Brigadier Bavrington, and the other dignitaries and guests and reservists from the past and the present who are here today. Not to mention those who are only able to watch from home. None of you are forgotten. I'm Neil Smith, and in closing I invite all to join our friends, our wonderful friends, the Salvation Army kitchen over there to my direct front for refreshments, and you're all invited to go across there in a moment or two. Don't forget a gold coin donation, and if you can afford it, something with a bit more paper. That would be nice to help the Salvation Army out. They do such a wonderful job on occasions like this and others. I will now dismiss the parade, and in closing, thank you all and bid you all a good day. Parade, Atte, ho, ho, out.
You haven't lost it, Neil. Well done, mate.